Hey friend, I'm so excited about this tutorial. I'm gonna be showing you some special watercolor effects using unusual techniques. And one of these I've never ever tried before. Literally I've heard about it and just like, I don't know, why would I wanna try that? I'm not gonna give it away yet because you gotta watch the full video. But it literally blew my mind, and John and I both said when we were filming it, this is by far the most, what's the word?
It's just the coolest thing we filmed.
It's the coolest thing we've ever filmed to date on this channel. I don't get my mind blown very often, but this did it. Make sure you watch the full video because it's gonna be in there and you're gonna be like, what? I didn't know that. I wanna try it. Anyways, let's get to it. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is salt. I use Himalayan pink salt, or you can do, I guess table salt might work. Try it out. But Himalayan pink salt is the salt that I use, and I just crack it over. I love using this like on moons for that texture on the moon, or in night skies. Even oceans is a really good idea because it creates a resist for when you drop it into wet pigment. So you got to make sure you crack it over, you sprinkle it over some wet pigment and water, so that it creates a resist and makes the pigment kind of just like run away from wherever the salt drops. And it creates this really fun kind of spider web net texture in a certain area. So if you're wanting to create like foam on an ocean or that bumpy texture on a moon, something like that is going to be a really great way to achieve that with something so unique, which, you know, table salt or pink salt, crazy. Another technique another technique that I love to use from time to time is actually just dropping in water, just pure water. So I use this a lot, again, on oceans. If I'm doing like a full, you know, overhead view of an ocean or a seascape, then I'll drop in some water and it creates kind of a similar look or texture to what salt does, but it's a little smoother. I'll even do this in night skies sometimes in my landscapes. Really fun, just kind of like whited out, bleached look, but not too white when you drop in water on a wet area of pigment. Again, it has to be wet because it's wet and it's creating a resist almost. Another fun technique to use for a really textured effect, or if you're wanting to kind of create clouds, is paper towels, or sometimes different types of paper can work as well. But paper towels, I'll just kind of dab and you can create a really unique texture to a backdrop or a wash. Maybe you're gonna upload it to your desktop as a little background, or maybe you're in licensing like I am, a surface pattern designer like I am, and it's just a fun background. Or you can kind of smudge and drag it along the paper towel and create clouds in a landscape. Really fun, simple technique to use for that like cloud-like textury effect. Another technique that I use pretty frequently is splatter. So I've done this before in some night skies where I just kind of tap or splatter using a paintbrush. You can also use a toothbrush that you don't use to brush your teeth, hopefully, and just kind of flick the hairs of the brush and it creates a splatter effect. It's great for night skies if you're wanting to put white gouache on your paintbrush or on your toothbrush and spray out some stars in some dark night sky, or just using kind of like a splatter effect. Love some ink splatters, love some paint splatters. It's a really fun look. I just mentioned some white gouache for the ink splatters in night skies. That's another really fun technique that I like to use for adding any highlights or details on flowers or people, eyes, if there's like highlights and eyes around hair. I also like to use it for my stars. I do use it a lot in floral watercolor as like highlights in stamen or to brighten up some stamen. And you would use it a lot for wet and dry painting. So not so much wet and wet because it kind of just becomes blurry and murky. So using wet and dry, and then once your base layer of your color is dry, then you dot it on top or add it, you know, to create highlights on hair or wherever you're using it. Super fun. Love some white gouache. So gouache is a really opaque, thick version of watercolor. I use Winsor & Newton Designer's gouache, white gouache, and we'll link all the supplies in the description below in this video. And it is a really thick paint that I just add a touch of water to so it becomes more inky, but not too inky. It's like the consistency of mud. So a little water. And so I just have it in this jar that I squirted it out from the tube, add a touch of water to it, and it's a little more muddy than just thick paint, and use it for my highlights, for my stars, any area that I want to brighten up or add some white to. All right, so up until this point, you've probably been like, that wasn't so unusual. I already knew about that, or like, that's pretty common. But now we're gonna start talking about some really unusual techniques that you can use for some crazy cool effects, starting with saran wrap. So you wanna wet your paper. Let's say you're painting an icy water area, or you wanna add some cool texture to water or a sky or a background of sorts. Then just big wash, big strokes. I used Prussian blue and a lot of water in this piece. And just place the saran wrap on top of it while it's still wet and kind of make sure those folds and creases are getting into the pigment and the water, and let your paper dry. And when you lift it off, it's gonna create a really cool texture that kind of looks like ice breaking apart on top of water, which pretty rad that it just was saran wrap and you didn't have to do anything else. So see how it looks when it's dry? It's like 3D. This would take me hours to do if I was doing this by hand and adding in the shadow and the midtones, but it took literally, I don't know, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Pretty awesome. Next, one of my favorite things to do, especially if I'm creating a cool pattern like this one in this piece, is masking fluid. You can use masking fluid whenever you want to retain the white of the paper. So it could be for a really detailed piece where maybe you're painting a portrait and you want to leave areas white, like on the lips where there's some shine, or in the eyes, or on someone's hair if you don't want to use white gouache later. But you're just going to use, I have a masking fluid pen that will link in this video. So it's a lot easier than just using a paintbrush. I can kind of draw the pattern if I want to, or I can draw the highlights if I want to, if it's something more detailed and realistic of a painting. But for this pattern, I just, basically illustrated a pattern that I wanted to be white and painted over it once that masking fluid dried. And then I just used the back end of a pencil or any kind of edge, like on this eraser, and scraped it off. And you can be pretty rough with it once it dry. Once your painting completely dries, you can kind of be rough with scraping it off. And then you have the totally retained white paper underneath the masking fluid that's super bright, and you have this fun pattern or highlight that you saved when you were painting a portrait, or maybe some highlights on an ocean, whatever. Love masking fluid. And now for the coolest thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. I was so surprised by how this came out. I was not expecting it. We almost didn't even film this one because I was like, I don't really think it does that much because I'd never tried it before. And we just decided to try it. Vodka, or I think you can use gin too. Yeah, I used vodka. Alcohol in wet pigment water. And it creates the coolest, like it looks like you're bleaching the pigment. And it looks like tie-dye, shibori tie-dye effect. And when you're gonna see these shots, I mean, we're getting super up close because we were literally super excited, giddy children over here filming this thing. You're, just cut to John being like,
oh,
so sick.
What? It's like the coolest thing that we've ever filmed.
I know. Wow.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, by far the coolest thing that we've filmed.
I could do this all day.
I know. I could watch it all day.
Anyway, you drop it in and it looks like a bomb or something goes off and it just like spreads. So cool, and bleaches the pigment. So I just did a really dark wash of Prussian blue and dropped it in. Obviously you wanna make sure you're working wet and wet. If the area underneath it isn't wet, then it's not gonna do that big burst, that bomb explosion. So make sure you're dropping it into a wet area. I could see this being a really fun jellyfish painting, fun texture to add to water paintings if you're painting a landscape. Also just a really cool pattern if you wanna do some sort of design that's reminiscent of like a shibori pattern, or just drop it in and make a cool texture, scan that stuff, digitize it, and make it into a phone case one day or something. I might do that. Loved it. Right, John?
Yeah, it was super cool.
It was super cool. There you go, folks. Some special watercolor effects using unusual techniques. I did it without a blooper. It was a wordy one. Let me know in the comments below if you have a special effect that you like creating with an unusual technique that I didn't mention in this video. Drop it below. I would love to find out about it because just like I was new to the alcohol one today and it blew my mind, who knows? There might be something else out there that I'm obviously not knowing about. Also, let me know which one was your favorite. If you don't have one that you could think of that I didn't mention, which one was your favorite? I'm gonna guess it was the alcohol one.
It was so cool.
It was pretty dope. Anyways, I hope you loved it. Would love to see your work. Tag me on Instagram at Jenna Rainey. And also make sure you like this video, comment on it, subscribe to our channel. So grateful for any sort of love that we can get from through this camera.
Oh, and impromptu hug.
Anyways, thanks so much. We appreciate you and all you do for this channel. See you in the next video.
Interesting in there.